Hello there. I've been working on some new systems and functions for my kill chain project, and I just wanted to go through them more for myself than for anyone else, but you never know, this could be useful to someone else. So the first thing I wanted to cover here is creating a sort of an ambient feel in a base. I'm using the KSAN map here, but it can be applied to any base, obviously. And it's probably quite frame heavy, so you need to think about when you might want to use this, but I personally use this before the mission, so this is almost like a lobby state. And you've got various things happening around that gives the impression of activity and just makes it a bit more interesting, a bit less like an empty map in a game sort of thing. So I'll do a quick demo and then I'll show you the code and then yeah, see where we go. This is all pretty much, well, is completely unscripted. I'm not expecting many people to watch this, so this is really, like I say, more for myself, just to remind myself what I was doing and thinking when I come back to it. I tend to sort of get stuck in, go heavy for a while, then step out and do something else for a while. So these things are useful for me just to help me kind of catch up with what I was doing before I went on a little mini break. So it's an MP mission, obviously. It's still very much work in progress. There's a lot of stuff in here, like there's the wrong screenshot there. Anyway, I'll shut up and have a little walk around. So there's not like a huge amount happening. This is more just to sort of give the impression of population without kind of overdoing it. So there's obviously a lot of ambient flybys happening here. A lot of units running around. There are jets as well. I haven't seen any. They tend to sort of go higher, which is kind of cool because you can hear them breaking the sound barrier, so you get the rumble in the background. The other things that might not be as evident from this, there you go. So you get gunfire in the background. And the other thing we've not heard yet is incoming artillery, which we might hear. I'll give it another minute just in case it comes through. And obviously the frequency of all these things can be tweaked to suit. Okay, well that's probably enough for a quick demo. I'll show you the code. Just zoom in a bit so it's a bit easier to see. So I've got a load of ambient functions that I've made, but the one in question is base activity. And it's all work in progress. There's a lot of green, so apologies for that. So here we create 40 ambient Indy4 units. So first thing to note is I'm using a hard-coded marker zone, which I've just called Wander Zone, and I'll show you that here. So what this does is create basically a spawning area where these units will be created and then walk around in. Wander Zone. Let's just bring out the alpha a bit. So you can see here, this is the area of activity. Obviously that's changeable, but that seems to work because you spawn in this area. This is where you do most of your kind of prep. Although, saying that, this is a pickup zone, so I might actually, while we're here, if I can find the center point, there we go. That's a bit better. Anyway, this is the zone that the units will be spawned in and will walk around in. Then, so for each of the 40 iterations that we're running here, we get a random position in the wander zone. We create its own group. So yes, there are 40 groups being created here, but they're deleted when they're not being used. So that doesn't impact on the overall hard-coded limit in Arma, I think. And this means that no one tries to get into formation. They just all kind of wander around as independent units. So, you know, again, this is probably a bit heavyweight. Probably don't want this running as well as a mission, but for a lobby setting, this is probably fine. Then I get a random Indy4 class name from a different function that I have. You could have that as its own sort of local array of Indy4 class names. I'll just show you quickly what I'm using. So it's G get random Indy4 class name. So I've basically got these class names, and the function just returns one of these randomly to that. No, sorry. To that. So that is a random class name. Then I create the unit in the group that I've created. That's the class name. From is the spawn point. So what have we got? It's the class name where you create it from. There's no markers, no placement really, 2 meters of placement, nothing special there, none. I'm adding also an add curator editable objects to this asset, which is a player asset. You don't need to do this, but what this does is it allows me to see everything in Zoo. So all of these 40, I can see them, I can delete them, I can move them if I want. That's the unit that I'm putting into this kind of Zeus state. And then I take the unit that I've created and I push it into this empty array. So this is like a holding array for the ambient units, so I can count them if I need to, and I can delete them if I need to. And that means that I can also leave other created units unaffected by any script. It's just an easy way to delete this bunch of wanderers. Okay, so that's the units created, and then I create what I call a cycle check. So I create a state called, in this case, base ambi. So while this is true, I do this stuff. And it cycles every minute. So there's a lot in here, but seems to be okay. It doesn't really sort of affect any frames as far as I can see. I'm running sort of an average PC, so I think it's okay. So once I've created the units, I create this cycle check, and then I move them. So I iterate for each of the units that I've created. I get a random position in the wander zone marker that I've made, the marker area. Then I just use a simple do move, so that unit from this array is moved to this random position. Then I get the group that the unit is, because each of them, if you remember, have their own groups. Then I've got an S mode and a B mode, so it's speed and behavior. So speed, limited, normal, full. Behavior, careless, safe, aware. I might get rid of aware because it's kind of a little bit odd. Them sort of, some of them are wandering guns down, some of them want sort of creeping around guns up. So it's a bit unrealistic maybe, but it's okay for now. So then I apply the set speed mode to the group and set behavior mode to the group. So as I understand it, these need group names to apply these things. So that's why I take the group of the unit, and then I sleep for 0.2 of a second. So this is a cycle. So this is about 20 seconds worth of activity right here while they're sort of cycling through. Then I'm on to the artillery. So it starts here and it ends here. So I create a probability by just taking a random number 1, 2, or 3, and if it's 1, then I do the arty. So it's 33% chance of it happening, and obviously you can change the percentage. I'm just going to cheat it just to demonstrate what it sounds like. So this will always happen every cycle. So I get the position of a hard-coded asset that I'm personally using, but it can be any point. But this is basically the center of the base, or it could be a marker position, but this is a fixed asset that I use called ammo1. So I get the position of that, the anchor, as I call it. Then I select a random number, which is the distance that I'm interested in applying to the anchor. Then I get a random direction, random 359, so obviously 0 to 359, that's your compass direction. Then I select a random number of shots, and then a random interval that will be between each shot, and then I'll choose a random explosion. So all of these things are then used in the creation of ambient effects, basically explosions in the distance. So I get the anchor that I'm going to use for the explosions by using the ammo1 position, and then I get from that I get a position of distance and direction. There's definitely things I can do here to improve it. In fact, I should say everything you're looking at is pretty low tech. I'm still kind of getting better at scripting. There's a lot of stuff that is either inefficient or superfluous or just wrong. But I'm just sharing what I've got because, it works. So I'm not going to spend too long wringing my hands over the leanness of it. it is what it is. If you see anything that is wrong, obviously let me know. But I'm going to be sharing this at some point on GitHub anyway. So anyway, you've got your anchor for the explosions, and then from 1 to the number of shots that you've chosen here, I do this stuff. So I use another select random for space, and then another randomized direction every time you cycle through it, 6 or 7 or 8 or however many. Another random distance, 1, 10, 20. So this is like distance and direction away from this impact point that you've created, which is far away-ish from your base center. Then I create, for each of these iterations, an impact point. This is basically, so I kind of do it in 2 stages. You get kind of an anchor point for the activity, and then from that point you do another iteration to get a few randomized areas, so that if you can see the explosions, they're not always happening in exactly the same place, because that looks a bit unreal. It should be a bit varied, so that's what I'm trying to do here. So you get the impact every iteration using the anchor and then the get pos distance and direction. Then you use your ord that so one of these would have been selected and put into here. So in this iteration, every iteration will be the same type, so it won't vary. And then I sleep as for one of these. So I think what I'm not doing right is the interval. I don't think I'm using that. So I need to maybe figure out how to add these 2 things together to space things out and make them a little bit more random. Anyway, that's the artillery. So when we go back in, we'll see that happen every cycle. That is always happening every cycle, because that's just walking around and moving. So the high jets. So this is a 50% chance of getting what I'm calling a high jet effect. So this is just an ambient flyby of a phantom, but let's see, height. Well, I say high jets. That's pretty low. So I think I'm just going to call that jets. Okay, so here is my randomizer, and just for now, we'll make this happen every time. So if we get a green light, as it were, then we do this stuff. So we select a random distance and a random direction and a random height. Distance, direction, height. Then we get our anchor, and we get a position from the anchor, distance and direction. So it could be in any, we could find a point, often, not directly over our heads, but it sometimes is with the 1. But it could be quite far away as well. It could be in any direction. And then once we've got the anchor for this to happen, then we get a start point for the flyby, which is the 5 clicks to the north, and you get an end point, which is 12 clicks to the south. So this means that they're always coming from one direction and going in, they're always going in the same direction, basically. So yeah, that could definitely be moved around, but it is what it is for now, nice and simple. So once you've got all that in order, then it's just a case of triggering an ambient flyby, which is using the start point, end point, height, full speed, class, and the faction. And that's it. Then you've got the ambient gunfire. So this is definitely hacky. And again, let's just make sure it's always happening for demo purposes. So if you get a green light on this ambient gunfire happening, then you've got this stuff triggering. So again, you've got a random direction, random distance, always quite far away from the center of the base. And you get an anchor based on distance and direction from the center of the base. So yeah, it's a lot of repeating, but I think you have to keep repeating this same function to get different pockets of activity in different directions all the time. Okay, so then you've got basically what I'm doing is I'm creating two units. I'm pointing them, I'm letting them like shoot each other because they're next to each other. I'll turn off the damage and then I'll delete them. So it's the quickest, hackiest way that I could do this. I can improve it by making sure that there are no players nearby, because otherwise that's going to be an instant immersion break. I'd see that happening. But yeah, it for now it works. It gives you that kind of clack clack in the background. But yeah, it is super hacky. So anyway, I've got the group, then I'll get a random opful class name, and then I'll create the unit, and then I'll turn off damage, do the same for blue 4. But the only difference is with blue 4, I'm always using the M60 class because it's, in my weird mind, I'm kind of imagining that base perimeter defenses are, M60s. So you're always going to hear an M60, but you're going to hear different opful weapons if your ears are trained enough. And then the fight section here. So I've got a random time that they will fight for, and then after that I delete them, and that's it. Simple as that. So the last thing that I'm going to show you in terms of effects is the low and fast helis. So again, let's just get this unlocked. So it always happens every cycle. So if you get, so at the moment it's normally running, because it could be quite disruptive possibly, 20% chance of it happening every cycle. And I guess as well, these cycles are kind of suited, how often you trigger these things depends on how long you take to sort of gear up before a mission. Anyway, that's a personal preference, but I've got it at 20%. So if you've got a green light for this little function, then you've got a random height, just pretty low, but it will vary a bit. Then you get a random point in the wander zone, and then you get a start point, which is the random wander zone point 2 clicks to the north, and then an endpoint 5 clicks to the south. And then you run an ambient flyby. So that always gives you at least one. And then I've got 2 more random checks. So I'm just going to hack this so that we always get a hit on each of these. So basically this means that this function gives you, if it happens, you always get 1, you might get 2, you might get 3. But what I'm doing here is just changing it so that we're always going to get 3. So I'm basically going to make this as busy as possible so we can sort of see it in action in a moment. Then the last thing I do here is I run a check to see whether I should ends this system. So I've got what I'm just calling a data store, empty array. For all of my players, I check whether any of the players, sorry, I get the distance of the player from the ammo crate I'm using in the center of the base. And if the distance is under 800, i.e. they're still in the base, then I put that player into the data store array. So if there are 10 players and one of them is at base, then there'll be one player in the array. And then I count the array, and if the array is 0, nothing in it, then I assume all players are away from the base and we can delete it. So then I go to my ambient units and I delete all of those, and then I turn off the check cycle, which is the looper here. So that's it. It stops running. And then if you want to run it again, you just have to call the function again. But at the moment, I've got it so that it runs at the beginning of the mission, and then, kind of when the mission is in progress and everyone is away from base doing their tactical stuff, this will just kind of disappear, stop working, but no one will notice because everybody will be away from it. So that's it. And let's see what the whole thing sounds like with everything always happening. There's the artillery. See the units running around. There's a gunfire. There's a sonic boom. Now I can hear the choppers coming in. There they are. So they're not directly over my head, but they might be. But it's a great sound. Just going to go for a little walk around. That one is from a different ambient script that is always running. Nice. So in spite of all of the stuff that's happening, it still seems pretty empty. It's kind of light ambience, I think I'd describe it as. So yeah, that is the ambient system that I'm using, and I quite like it. Just it was a fair amount of work actually, but in the right hands it probably wouldn't have been. But yeah, it's enough to keep things a bit spicy while you're gearing up. That's sounding a bit close. Anyway, I hope that's been in some way useful or helpful or inspiring. Yeah, if you want to talk to me about it, I'll put a Discord link in the description.ext below. Cool. Have a great day.